thankfully, the Buddha laid this out. A lot of people don't realize it because in a lot of traditions, there's no instructions, or there's no way of saying, what do I have to do to become enlightened. But the Buddha said, these are the things. He said that we have to abandon these fetters. A fetter is like a chain or a cufflink, or not a cufflink, but handcuffs. Handcuffs is a fetter. If in the old days when they had a chain gang, these prisoners working on the side of the road digging ditches, they were all chained together, and these were considered fetters. They were all fettered together so that they couldn't escape. They didn't have any. When a person doesn't have any freedom, they're fettered in some way, mentally or physically, or that type of thing. So a fetter is something that keeps us within this world, within this life, and keeps us bound to this existence. Not only in this life, but past lives and our future lives as well. So from the Buddhist standpoint, belief, and many other traditions as well, we die, the body dies anyway, and then there's a rebirth, and we're back at ground zero, depending on our karma. So it really has everything to do with karma. It really does. So you'll probably hear that word quite a bit in the next half hour or so. The very first fetter is something called, it has different names. Sometimes it's called identity view, but it's the fetter of it's called annata, which means non-self. And we have to remember that the Buddha was born and raised a Hindu. And in Hinduism, there's a thing called Atman, and there is a self that is created in their beliefs, in their tradition. There is a self very much like a soul that after this life, there's they believe in a reincarnation where the soul is reunited with their personal God. In Hinduism, there's many gods, and I'm not really totally versed on Hinduism, and I want to be very careful not to make any errors in what I'm saying about Hinduism. But the Buddha was born a Hindu, but a couple of the things in Hinduism he was not very pleased with, and one of them was back in 600 years ago, they were doing a lot of animal sacrifice, and he really thought that was not the thing to do. They were doing a lot of sacrificing of different types of animals, to these various gods, these various Hindu gods, and he thought that was very cruel. But one of the other things that he thought was that in Hinduism, if there's a belief in a soul, that goes against the idea that we live in this impermanent world and that everything is in constant change, which it is. We might not always think of it, but if we take a look at nearly everything in our world, well, not nearly everything in our world is in constant change, it's in constant flow. It's changing all of the time. A rock will change to sand, and sand will turn to dust or soil. Even our bodies will grow old and then eventually decay. Everything is changing all the time. I look at this desk, I have some papers laying around. These papers won't last forever. There's a book here. Looks pretty nice and new right now, but after a few years, of course, the pages will yellow and the ink will get brittle and it'll fall apart. Even our computers, our electronics get old. We know how that works. They don't always function as well as they did when they were new. Especially, seems like the high-end Apple stuff or whatever. Some things just don't last as long as others, but everything has its day, we could say. I've mentioned before that I don't really believe about a beginning and ending, but just constant change. And this is very true in this area of annata. Annata means non-self. And so that word non-self, first of all, let me back up a little bit about these fetters. These fetters, there's 10 of them, and the first 5 are considered the lower fetters. I will run through them right now, and then we'll touch on them real briefly. And if we don't finish up today, maybe we can kind of talk about them a little bit more next week. But there's 10 fetters. The very first one is called annata, which means non-self. And my teacher, Bhante Gururantana, made it very clear, he's said this many times, that the true meaning of it is no permanent self. And no permanent self also means that we have to look out of this definition that we have as a soul. So if we call if we look at the definition, our personal definition of a soul as something that is permanent, that is going to go up to a different realm, like a heaven realm or something like that, and stay up there as something that's permanent and non-changing, that we should seriously take another look at that, because it will eventually cause suffering for us. That's the very first fetter. The next fetter is the fetter of doubt. And I'll try to run through these as much as I can. The third fetter is ritual attachments to rites and rituals. And then once these first 3 fetters are abandoned, the Buddha said that, if we really abandon these fetters, we will have one more rebirth in this world, or in any other world. The Buddha talked about different worlds and different universes and everything that are a possibility for a rebirth. The fetters 4 and 5 are sensual desire. The 5th one is ill will, which is so far we have a couple of the same fetters that we had in the hindrances, if you'll notice that. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But the Buddha said if we abandon the 4th and 5th fetters, then there will be have one more rebirth, but that rebirth would be a much better rebirth rather than being in a world where we have a lot of suffering, like maybe what we're up against now, for example. He said that wouldn't be the case, because there would be much, much less karma that we're dealing with. It would be, and he said it would be in a rebirth in a pure abode. And then the last 5 fetters, which are called the higher fetters, the material rebirth, which is a type of lust, and then the 7th fetter is an immaterial rebirth, which is another type of lust or greed. Number 8 is conceit, and then number 9 is restlessness, and number 10 is ignorance. And then once all of these 10 fetters are completely abandoned, a person would reach arhatship. And this is obviously what the Buddha did in order for him to become enlightened. He abandoned these fetters, and it was the end of karma for him, and there was no more rebirth for him. And he knew that. He expressed that before he died. And he actually made the statement that he said, and he suggested us that we do the same thing. He said, make an island unto yourself, strive hard and become wise. Rid yourself of impurities and cleansed of stain. You shall not come again to birth and decay. And so what he was saying is make an island unto yourself, and that includes, meditation. Go within and really work. This is the skillful effort that we're talking about in part of our meditation practice, to really work at our own, saving ourselves, our own salvation. He said that nobody's going to swoop down and save you. It's really up to us. And so from that standpoint, we do have a certain amount of control and free will. He said strive hard and become wise, but to practice and do our, the kind of studies that we might be doing, maybe something like this. Rid yourself of impurities and cleansed of stain. So we touched on this last week as far as the negativity that we can hold within us, that we should abandon that negativity, cultivate positive states, and then maintain these positive states. And we can do a great deal of that work in meditation or outside of meditation. So this is something that we should be doing all the time. And the best way to do that is to keep this subject of karma in mind. Am I thinking negative? Am I thinking in ways that are moral and beneficial for myself and others? Am I thinking loving, compassionate thoughts, or am I thinking thoughts opposite? The thoughts of desire, thoughts of anger or fear or revenge or something like this. He was basically saying again that there is not going to be a God that's going to swoop down and take care of things for us. And that's why he's suggesting that the adherence and the belief in a permanent soul can be detrimental to our spiritual awakening and our spiritual journey here, this time around or any time around, because if we believe in a soul, and again, it all has to do with definition, but if we believe that there's a permanent soul, that we came into this world with this soul, and then our soul, after this body dies, that the little miniature us will be taken up to heaven or some pure abode where a creator will come down and take care of us, or will be taken care of by a creator. And the reason I say that can be detrimental to our spiritual practice and our spiritual advancement is because we would have a tendency not to apply that effort, thinking that that we're going to be taken care of. And there's many things in Buddhism, and even in the study of the fetters that we're talking about here, that lend itself to that explain that in so many ways, that if we believe that there is a personal God or a creator God, that we will let down our guard, in other words. And that's, the Buddha didn't really necessarily call it a soul, so to speak, because, well, he didn't speak English language anyway. That's a word that we came up with here in the West primarily, or in the English language anyway. But it kind of morphed into a soul when we refer to ourselves as a self. That oftentimes, again, determining what kind of definition we have, we're talking about a soul, a self that goes off into a different realm after we die. So again, when we wish to really look at this teaching, as clearly as possible, we have to keep in mind the idea of karma. And with karma, a lot of people look at that as a kind of a woo-woo type of thing, but it's cause and effect, or actions and their results, basically. So if there's an action that we perform in this lifetime, it has repercussions. It's like throwing the pebble into the pond. Even after that action of the pebble hitting the water, the ripple effect goes on and on and on. So our actions, even after our bodies die in this lifetime, our actions still reverberate. They still go on, and this is true for everybody, of course. So there is kind of a global karma, that can happen here. And the question comes up, if in Buddhism there is rebirths, and we go from life to life, and if there is no soul as we see it, from our Christian standpoint. Many of us have been probably raised Christians and taught that there is a soul, and even if we haven't been taught that, we might somehow feel as if there's some part of us that goes from life to life. And the Buddha said he didn't deny that. He reminded people, when he was asked this, he reminded people that the Buddhism was like a philosophy of the middle way. The Buddhist path is neither here or there, far left or far right, but it's a very balanced philosophy and religion, if you will. And so he's neither talking about nihilism but he's not talking about what's the other term opposite of nihilism, where we're living, kind of embarrassing, but I have to pull out my notes here. Let's just call it eternalism, and that's actually what it is. So it's two extremes. Nihilism is somebody that believes that when we die, we're done. There's nothing here. Eternalism is somebody that would believe in a soul that is absolutely permanent. So there's a likeness of us in some way. All of our thoughts, all of our actions, everything that we remember goes on, and it's recorded in such a way that we can reflect on all of our experiences and say, oh, now for example, maybe now I'm in heaven, and this is so great. It's gonna stay like this, and things will be wonderful. But the Buddha said, neither one of these views is correct. That nihilism or eternalism are both wrong, and that what goes on from life to life is really, he didn't say some aspect of our consciousness, but in some sutras he kind of led on to that there is a part of the mind that goes from life to life. But more than that, he said it was very much like our karma and like our karmic seeds. So our karmic seeds, very much like when we throw the pebble in the pond, the karma lasts and it goes on, it continues on. If we would die, that karma would even go on to the next life, and we would be there to pretty much greet it. When we describe it as karmic seeds, we can understand that these, like a seed in the desert, for example, when the conditions are right, the proper water, the proper temperature, the proper nutrients, the seed opens up and it flourishes. And that's a very, very much the same way with our karma. We can have karma from many, many past lives that have come into this life, for example. It's very, very mind-boggling for us to go, why did something happen? Why did this happen? Why did that happen? And for the most part, we should probably just accept it, because we're going to have difficulty finding, the source of that karmic connection to these things that have happened in this lifetime. So there is a part of us that goes from life to life. The Buddha said that there is no permanent part of us that goes from life to life. So Shane here, and this body, of course, this body is going to die, and then there'll be some aspect of this stuff that will go on to a next life. For the most part, there's that veil of forgetfulness that is just not remembered. I've been fortunate enough to have a past life memories, through regressions and that type of thing. So I can kind of talk about it firsthand, that there are experiences from a past life that I remember. And so I know that there will be a future life. I don't really see myself as being fully enlightened in this lifetime. Who knows? It might happen, but I don't necessarily plan on it, but I'm going to be working on it for sure. And that means to watch the actions of body, speech, and mind, and try to clean up as much karma as possible. And that's the whole idea here. I could go on and on and on about annata and this identity view. We'll leave it at that. Let me see if there's any questions. Hi, Jennifer. Nice to see you. You haven't seen you for a while. Nice having you here. Okay, we got a few happy people out there. Nice to see you, everybody. Again, thank you all for being here. Wednesday night. I'm going to do a little bit more talking, and then we're going to try to get as much meditation in as possible, and we'll be done here in about a half hour. I'm talking about the stages of enlightenment, the 10 fetters, that we have to abandon these fetters. This all has to do with the Eightfold, the Buddhist Eightfold path, of which there's if you're local, I'm not supposed to talk about this, but there's a program coming up at the end of this month. And it's a live program. If anybody's interested in that, check it out. Go to one of the websites. myname.org, shanewilson.org is one of them. That's one of the easy ones to remember anyway. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the fetters again. These fetters are broken up into, there's 10 of them. I talked about the first one, the annata, or the identity view, or non-self, or no soul, we could call it, which is the opposite view. The main differences between Buddhism and Hinduism is that teaching right there. That the Hinduism, they believe that there is a self, there's a self-realization with a capital S. And in Buddhism, there is no self. Particularly, we should clarify and say that there's no permanent self, because we use the terms I. We should be careful with that. But I'm happy, I'm sad. And that means that and this is mine. We have ownership. We call things by their name. And we don't want to have to go through life not using these words, but we want to be clear about our beliefs and understanding, and basically to save ourselves, that there's nobody's going to swoop down and save us. Been hearing a lot of people say, there's politically talking, people will say, that Donald Trump's not going to swoop down and save us. We have to do it ourselves, things like that. So that's kind of a term that we hear more lately, it seems, that there's to work on our own salvation. And the Buddha spoke of that 600 years ago. So we should take heed. The very first area of the fetters, abandoning the fetters, is called stream enterer, and that means that somebody is seeking more life, joy out of life. A stream enterer is somebody that is getting on the path, namely the Eightfold path. Stream enterer is like dipping their toe in the water and then being carried away with the flow. Somebody's entering the stream, they're entering the world of Dharma, Buddha Dharma. And in this Dharma, it's it could be spiritually fulfilling, and again, it has everything to do with watching our karma, watching actions of body, speech, and mind. And then there's the once returner, somebody abandoning some of these fetters, and they come back for one rebirth. And then there's the non-returner, somebody that would be, the Buddha expressed it. He said that there would be one more rebirth in a pure land, and so it wouldn't be existence like this earth that we have. Well, it might be, but the mind would be completely different. It'd be completely accepting of everything and everyone. There would be a total oneness. And then the Arhat, once we abandon the last 5 fetters, the Arhat is the fully enlightened being. And this is all possible, for us. Now, once we understand and really start working with karma and the understanding of non-self, we understand that of the idea of impermanence, the teachings of impermanence, that everything is in fluid motion, nothing stays the same. And we see this with the eye of understanding karma, then that abandons, or that takes care of any doubt that we have, because we can actually feel it, because we're actually living the experience. When we are really noticing every aspect of karma, the doubt vanishes because we become happier, and our meditation becomes stronger, our concentration becomes stronger, and we live a life that's much more mindful, and the result is happiness, and that abolishes any kind of doubt, which is the 9th, or the 2nd fetter. That brings us to the 3rd fetter, which is rites and rituals, which has everything to do with the annata, or the idea of a permanent self or a permanent soul. Now, again, we have to remember that the Buddha was born a Hindu, and he was raised a Hindu from a Hindu family. He didn't necessarily. He had some disagreements with the tradition of Hinduism, and one of them was animal sacrifice, as I mentioned earlier. So this fetter, this ritual attachment, has everything to do with the rituals of blindly sacrificing animals, and whatever, maybe even humans to some extent, to please the gods. This isn't so much a part of the Hindu practice anymore, but it was back at that time. And so he really felt that it was very important for people to understand that this isn't going to help anybody wake up. And one thing I've seen, I've visited China a couple of times, and not only in China, I've been in most of the Asian countries at some time or another. And one thing I noticed, particularly in China, is I would do a lot of temple visits and visiting different temples, Buddhist temples, and they would often take 3 sticks of incense and light the incense, and then make their vows, or sometimes bowing in a certain way, and then stick those incense into the container in front of the Buddha. And then you could kind of get the idea that they're saying, okay, that's my thing, that's my ritual, I'm done. I'm done for the day. I'm all taken care of. And that's one of the things that the Buddha was very wanted us to really be aware of, that that's not going to save us. That's not going to help us get anywhere, spiritually, by just going through these rituals. And so we want to be very careful that in a very, very subtle way, we can even do that with meditation. I tell people all the time, and this is very important, to be consistent with their meditation practice, right? I mean, I think everybody would agree with me on that. It's very important to do it, I think, every day. Not necessarily for 5 hours a day or even an hour a day, but to do it every day to a certain extent. But if a person, I had one student, he was bragging about how he had meditated every day for a year, and he took the insight timer, and sometimes he was only meditating for 2 minutes, but he was still able to use the timer in such a way that he felt as if he was meditating every day, and he was able to keep a log, and that he meditated every day, one way or another. And I wonder, what kind of depth of meditation that he actually got into, that he was able to get into, where he was just more concerned about logging these things. And so in a very subtle way, we can become attached to our meditation practice by just kind of marking it down, like, okay, I got my time in today and I'm done. In some cases, our meditation practice is going to be tough, especially when we're traveling or something like this. It's very hard to, get a good, 45-minute, 1 hour meditation in, and we might have to feel like we're cutting it short. And it might not be a very good meditation, but we certainly don't want to do meditation just to get the time in, to knock it off, to put a check mark next to it and say, I'm done. So even our meditation practice itself could be included in that ritual attachment, So basically, any kind of attachment we really want to look out for. Let's see. Time is rapidly going by us here. I'm going to stop here. This is the first three fetters is the identity view, or the annata, and then doubt, and then ritual attachment. And I was hoping to have a whiteboard. Maybe I can figure out a way to do this next week, but I wanted to have a whiteboard where I have all these written out, and I could have it right here or something. But on this screen, everything, if anybody has any pointers for this, let me know, but everything is backwards, and so having a whiteboard behind me is not going to help. All the print is backwards, and I'm not sure how to rectify that. I know on Zoom, for example, you can just switch that. They have a switch for that, but there's nothing like that for insight timers. But if anybody has any insights on that, please let me know, so I can get the mirror image, so that it can do something where the print isn't backwards. So I will do the rest of these. I will do fetters 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. I'll try to get all through those next week. All right. Virtual whiteboard, Lyle says. Virtual whiteboard. You'll have to explain to me what you mean by that. Virtual whiteboard sounds interesting. Sounds like something that might work, but I have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah, Zoom. Well, yeah, Zoom has it, but Insight doesn't. That's the problem. The book appeared correct, not backwards, Jennifer says. Is that right? So you don't see it backwards. I see it backwards on my screen only. Wow. That is wild. Okay. Well, we'll check into that. Hold up a book or something with writing. I didn't think we see it reversed. Terry says, yeah, I'm holding it up. I'm definitely holding it up. Looks good. Okay. All right. Well, never mind. I'm not sure why it's backwards on my camera, and it's backwards on my screen. So that's wild, really wild. So I'll do a whiteboard next week, and then you'll be able to get a clear view of what all of this is, and rather than just throwing out a lot of words, you have something to look at. So let's do a little bit of a meditation. If you like, please make yourself comfortable, and find your cushion, find your chair. If you're not there already, make yourself comfortable. Gently close your eyes. Bring your attention to the breath. Just notice the breath coming in to the body and leaving the body. Notice how every breath is different. Every breath has its own variation. Every breath is impermanent. Yet every breath is flowing, seemingly having a beginning and an end. But they're all connected in the act of breathing. Impermanence can be found in everything. Bring your attention to some aspect of the body besides the breath. Notice any aches or pains or feelings of comfort, feelings of blissfulness perhaps. And notice how these are seemingly coming and going, changing, flowing. Nothing really truly staying the same. Place your attention on the palms of your hands now. Can you feel the aliveness in the palms of your hands? And so, whatever we place our attention on follows. Now we can move our attention again to some other aspect of the body. Notice the temperature of the body at this moment. The temperature against the skin. Now you might still have that aliveness in your hands, but your attention brought your awareness away from that and to something else, another area of the body. And now bring your attention back to the breath. Feel the air as it comes in and as it leaves. Breathing in, breathing out. And now I ask you to notice how present you were when I was taking you to your hands and to your body, to your breath, these different aspects of the body itself. The body is a wonderful tool for being present. And one of the key features of presence, that is being aware and being a part of this present moment, one of the features of this is to be selfless. That there is no awareness of the self as far as the aspect of mind. The body is a very gross tool that we can use, this form that we have. It's easy to focus upon. In fact, we focus on it most of the day, in one way or the other, taking care of it, nourishing it, cleaning it, exercising it, and getting it ready for this or that, protecting it. So oftentimes when we're focused on the body, the mind takes a second seat. And oftentimes we can even neglect the mind to a certain extent. And it's the mind that is really the long-term investment, and the body is the short-term investment. When we look at the impermanence of the body and mind, we should keep in mind that we don't put our trash in a suitcase when we're ready to go someplace, when we're ready to travel. And same thing with the mind. We want to keep the mind clear and clean when it's ready to go on. So this idea of annata, or no self, is a teaching of no permanent self. We know that the body is not permanent. And there is really no aspect of the mind that is permanent in such a way that we will be able to compare this life with the next life. We must simply trust and work with ourselves, save ourselves by being aware of our karmic connection with everything that we do and say and think. When our meditation is peaceful and blissful, there's no sense of self. We're not saying, I'm having a wonderful meditation. And if we would think this, we would be drawn out of the meditation, or out of the blissfulness and back into the selfing, or the feeling that I must protect or I must control in some way. And so the teaching of impermanence can be very liberating in that we understand this flow of life, and that our happiness can't be found outside in an impermanent world, and that our happiness can be found within by understanding our karmic connection with everything that we do. Being moral and kind, compassionate. I invite you to take a little deeper than normal inhalation of the breath. Bring in some nice cool air into the body, energy. Slowly exhale. And do this a few times, taking in a nice deeper than normal breath. See if you can feel the body coming to, waking up a little bit. And if you're ready, feel free to open the eyes. Bring yourself back. I hope that short meditation worked well for you. I got a little bit winded again, as far as talking about some of these aspects of the Buddhist teachings, namely the 10 fetters and these stages of awakening or stages of enlightenment. But I think it's very important that we understand them, for our spiritual progress and just to become happier people. We'll see everybody next week. Love you. Have a good week, and we'll see you then. Thank you. Bye-bye.